The reason we're having this meeting tonight is feeling like there are a lot of people who haven't, through our own not paying attention or through cities' inadequate notice, learned enough about the housing element or been vocal enough about the things that we want to cherish and maintain around Mill Valley, that the purpose of tonight is to do education and engagement activities around the housing element so that this is an informative kind of meeting, giving you information, hoping that then being better informed, we're all ready to be participating in the meeting Monday night when our Mill Valley Planning Commission has recommended to the City Council that they adopt the housing element. So hopefully, as much as tonight is really important that all of you are here, and there's such appreciation for that, this meeting gets its greatest leverage and momentum in preserving some of the things that we really cherish with Mill Valley if you then will also show up for the meeting next Monday night. So, okay, so we're almost ready to get started. For tonight, we're going to have about 30 minutes where you'll be able to hear from Bob Silvestri talking about the in-depth analysis that he's done of the housing element, 30 minutes or so, and then we will open it up for questions and comments from all of you to be able to really make this a community forum, to be talking about where there's agreement, where there's still questions, what to do, and all of that. And then we'll be wrapping up, but we'll have about an hour for questions and comments, and we plan to be wrapping up about 9:15. Okay, so Bob Silvestri was also one of the early participants in Friends of Mill Valley. He's been a Mill Valley resident for many years and is one of those people, like many others of you in this room, who have devoted many, many hours on a volunteer basis to read and study and understand what is being proposed for the city. And luckily for all of us, Bob, as a former planner and developer and, a jack of all trades, is able to read many of the documents and decipher them in pretty clear English for the rest of us. So, in addition to that, he's an architect, reading from the back of the book, a graduate of Cooper Union School of Architect living in Mill Valley. He's also currently president of the Environmental Media Fund, and most recently the founder of Community Venture Partners, which is looking at issues throughout Marin County and throughout the Bay Area. And he's here with attorney Ed Yates, who's a part of Community Venture Partners and brings that kind of legal expertise to the work that we're better understanding is an important tool in the tool chest for being able to protect city and small town character and local serving businesses. So, and then I'll let Bob say more about Ed later if you wish, but for now, please join me in welcoming Bob.
I apologize. I want to use this because I'm trying to save my voice. So thank you. Just to say about Ed. Ed is a expert land use attorney, former deputy counsel to the county of Santa Barbara. Has had a long practice. Worked he's a CEQA expert and also a NEPA expert, which is the EPA version, which he actually helped craft some of those regulations in Washington. So what I'm going to do is talk for about a half an hour, and then we're going to just open it up. This is your town hall, so it's for people to talk and share their thoughts and ask questions of each other and whatever. So, and I'm really, this sounds corny, but I'm heartened to see you here. I mean, we live in an age where, it seems to be only important to either be a tech billionaire or a celebrity chef. And I think there's another thing called the community member that's underrated, and I think it's great to come out and be part of the community, so thanks for that. And I want to put up here something that's just really fundamental to what I'm going to talk about. Two numbers. One number is 129, and the other number is 310. 64, I believe, although we counted 64 and the city counted 63, so I don't know who's right. But I'll get back to why that's important in a minute. The other thing I want to say is this is not a for and against meeting. You know, so if somebody came here to kind of, you know, game that and say that everybody who, you know, talks about housing must be a NIMBY or must be this or that, you're going to be disappointed. This is about getting things right. This is not about yes or no. It's a complex problem, complex issues, and they have to be understood to make good decisions. So one of the fundamental questions that we have in all of this, and if you've read, there she is, hi, and the baby. That's Jessica Jackson, one of our city council members, and her newest child. Nice to see you. Your baby participating in community events. Let me ask you a question. How many people here, just so I know what's going on, how many people know about the housing element or have read it or have some knowledge of it? Okay, so a lot of people, and the general plan. I mean, you're familiar with the general plan, most of you, or you certainly know what it means and what it is and what a buffer is and things like that. How many have read some of the comment letters that CVP has written? We've written two, one on March 18th and one on the 15th. Okay, so about half the people. Okay, so if there's something that, you know, I haven't said, you know, I don't answer, you can ask. I'm going to go over it kind of quickly. So the housing element that we have, which is one piece of the general plan. The general plan has a number of elements. I think it's 7, quote me on that, but there's a land use and there's an environmental one, and there are all different aspects. And each element deals with that issue. The uniqueness of the housing element is it's the only piece of a general plan in the state of California that has to be certified legally. And that has fallen mostly to getting HCD's approval. HCD is the agency in Sacramento, Housing and Community Development, that oversees this, and that's been problematic. I'll say it straight out. So we had to create a housing element. It used to be, I think, every 5 years. Now it's every 8 years, unless you don't get it done on time, and then it's every 4 years. But in any case, we actually did a housing element only a couple of years ago. And the way the legislation got done, it got pushed up. We had to do another one. But I want everybody to understand, this is a de novo process. You can start over if you want. There's nothing that a city can't do. It doesn't matter what the last housing element looked like. It doesn't matter how it was done. You can go forward and create a new one. So what the city did this time, similar to what they did last time, is they basically surveyed all of the city of Mill Valley, looked at lots, looked at capacity, the potential capacity. And then they started to add what I would call filters, saying that, well, you know, if this site was newly constructed in the last, 10 years or 15 years, it's really unlikely that someone's going to tear it down and build a new building. And if this property has completely built out its FAR and it's a thriving property, it's very unlikely that they can build. They can't build more, really, without variances. And so they started to then reduce this list, which started basically with all the sites in the city. And that includes single-family sites, where they said, well, this site, you know, there's nowhere to put even a guest house on it, so there it is. So that came down to a list, and that list comes out to about 364 units. And I want to say straight out, our fundamental, Community Venture Partners' fundamental argument with this is that we need other filters. That it's not enough to do it for what HCD would like. We have to apply other filters that respect what we need as a community. And it's basically a as simple as that. So we feel they didn't go far enough. And the significance of these numbers is that 129 is the number that is passed on to us from ABAG, which is passed on to them from Sacramento, allocated to our city, the number of units of construction that we feel we have zoning capacity for the next 8 years. And that includes all levels of housing. I think 40 of those units are low income, very low income. We're fortunate that the Redwoods is going to have an expansion and that qualifies for all that. And it goes up to market rate housing too. I mean, that whole 29 is everything. That's if someone builds a guest house, builds a new house, whatever. So the fundamental question we keep asking is, okay, if that's the number we have to legally meet, and we easily meet it, we have hands down, no question, why, how much more than that do we have to have? And why do we have to have almost 200% more? And that's the question we have never gotten a really good answer. We've gotten answers, but they're not good answers. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this, but my feeling is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical, it's what I do. There's not enough planning going on in our planning department. There's a lot of processing, there's a lot of rules and passing through, but my opinion about planning is you look at the future and you say, what do we want it to be? Not what does it have to be? And that's a big difference. And why it's that way, I don't know, but it has to be changed. Because the world is changing. The world's getting very complicated, very sophisticated. And quite frankly, we are all, as cities and Maria, understaffed, and we don't have the expertise on board to deal with these things. Just to give an example, when they were going to build the Larkspur landing plan, they were going to approve it in Larkspur, 1 million square feet of new development at the ferry terminal area, without one single dollar for transportation improvements there, not even another extra ferry. CVP went and put together a team of experts. Ed Yates, very instrumental in that, biologists, environmental, traffic consultants. We basically put together a better team than they had put together, spending $650,000 of taxpayers' money. And we brought our case to them and said, this doesn't work. Point by point, fact by fact, legal issue by legal issue. And the good news is that the city of Larkspur said, fine, we're not going to do it. But if we hadn't done that, it would have been done because it was driven by grant money from Sacramento, and nobody seems to want to say no to money, you know? Give away your town for $650,000 in grants. So anyway, this is the situation we're in, and I really feel that we need to have more filters, as I say, to get to this question of not, you know, who is right about this argument or that argument, but what is right for our city. So what are those extra filters? And that's very simple. One is that our general plan is quite clear that we have a goal and a vision to support our local serving businesses. That's written in there over and over, and also to preserve the character of our community. And there are many sites that are put on this list, designated on this list, that I feel are contrary to the goals and spirit of the general plan. And that is a problem. It's also a legal problem. The city denies this, but maybe Ed can talk about it at some point. It's a problem. And our general plan, under the state constitution, is the constitution, or the Supreme Court has ruled, that it is the constitution of our city. And you cannot have this kind of discrepancy where one piece is not aligned with everything else. So if you start to look at that, we have businesses like Goodman's Lumber, like Sloat's Nursery, like the car wash, like Bank of America, over where the shopping center is on Lifedale, and many others that are very important local businesses. And if you start designating them to have housing capacity, I was a developer. I'm sorry, that's how you find property. If you look at the history of this city, and I've been here for 22 years doing this, every project that we've had that was problematic, that went through enormous battles, 505 Miller, which was done by a friend of mine, Mike House, 500 Miller, which is called the Vonderwerth Project, the Laguna Project, the proposed Richardson Project, all of these have been on lists. And when it's on a list, the president of ABAG has gotten up at builders' conventions and said, they want you to come. They're telling you to come. This is it. And if it has some other designation on it, which the city can, in some cases, adopt, like the planned development area, we don't have those, thank goodness. But if it has those, it's another, hey, come and build here. We have some other designations that apply to some of our areas, like Goodman's Lumber. So we're basically saying we don't need to satisfy a bigger number, and we don't need to, we have everything we need to get approved by the state, if we want to get approved by the state. So why are we doing this? Why do we want Goodman's to go away? Do we want a developer to come and say, I can make a lot more money here building housing, and then all of us for a picture hook have to drive to Home Depot? You know, it's just insane. It's completely against what is the right thing to do. And so I really don't care about, you know, he said, she said, this and that. That's a filter we need. The second filter we need is that there are properties and assets in parts of Mill Valley that the public over decades, in some cases, has clearly demonstrated their belief about what these properties should be. And, you know, one of the examples is sitting right here in this room, which is our friends who bought the Mill Valley Lumber and said they want to preserve it. Now, if somebody said, I want to buy Mill Valley Lumber and tear it down and build $1 million condos, we would have had a real battle. So it doesn't take, you know, extrasensory perception to know what our city wants. And some properties, like the Richardson property, have been fought. The community has spent thousands of dollars, probably even more than $10,000, thousands of hours, making their opinions known and even offering an acceptable solution, and it's all ignored. And this is a problem. It can't be ignored, because if we were, you know, at 132 units, then you could have an argument that says, well, the state will make us do it. But there is no argument. And this is kind of laughable. The argument that I wrote this 27-page letter with the help of Ed and a bunch of other people to take this housing element apart piece by piece. And when we brought up this issue about why do we have this enormous buffer, meaning the number over the amount we need, the only argument promoted by the city was, well, it gives us, in quote, tremendous flexibility in planning. And here's what they said. They said, well, if a developer comes and doesn't want to build the maximum capacity we've shown, then we don't have a problem because we have other sites to fulfill our RENA. There's a saying, so in other words, if a site is designated to have 10 units on it, or 15, or 16, or 12, or whatever, and the developer says, gee, I don't want to build 12, I just want to build 6, if you only had 129 units designated, you would have a problem with HCD, because they'd say, well, wait a minute, you said, you know, you're going to meet this number, and this property is supposed to have 10, and now you want 8. You're not certified anymore. You're below your number. But there is not a single instance in the history of Marin that I can find where you needed to be 200% over in order to worry about that. Because the reality is that I don't know a single developer, including myself when I did it for 15 years, that ever said, I want to build less. I mean, it's a game. You ask for twice what you expect to get. That's how it works. If planning or the city doesn't agree with that, I'm happy to sit down and talk to them about it. But that's how it works. And so you do have to be cautious about these things. And we're not asking to violate the law. We're not asking to violate the rules. opposed. We're not against the housing element. We're saying, let's do it right. So the two filters are, it has to align with the general plan, and you can't have legally a thing called horizontal inconsistency. In other words, one portion of the general plan can't say, preserve your core business areas and support them, and the other one say, well, businesses can be replaced by housing. And there, as I say, there are these sites that are well documented as what the community believes should be it. So we don't believe that the housing element tail should be wagging the general plan dog, as simply as I can put it. The general plan should be respected, and it's abundantly clear. It talks about small town character, it talks about all these things. So, and I just want to say that, kind of in closing on this, is that this is not about being fearful. This is about being educated and realistic. You know, there is no question when the Metropolitan Transportation Commission gave $650,000 to the city of Larkspur, the contract, the grant agreement, used the word, you said you will urbanize Larkspur no less than 9 times in the agreement. Now, not a single resident when we started protesting knew that that was in the agreement. But with that, we couldn't find a single resident in Larkspur who agreed with that as being policy, and it completely violated their general plan. We don't have anything in our general plan that says urbanize Mill Valley. But it is not a secret, and
Okay, so let's see. Here, we're going to move into a time then to hear your comments and questions to Bob or Ed. Just a couple of things to say. You know, we expect this to be a respectful community forum, so understanding there might be different points of view, but to express those respectfully. You know, we're looking to be solution-oriented, so we really can keep building towards the kinds of environment, the kinds of community that serves us all best. And to say that, just in terms of the logistics of this, I'll just kind of move through the audience and asking you to speak into the mic, and if you hold the mic kind of like this, like it's an ice cream cone, you'll get really good sound, and we'll use that here, and then we've got a mic up here. So if you have a question or comment, I'll start here and work my way around. And first, Ed.
One exception to the rule on civility is that I have a hearing problem. I wear hearing aids, so this is your chance to yell at a lawyer. And he'll love it.
You can point at him if you want to yell. Okay, so I'll work my way down here. So just one other thing is to say, if you could all keep your comments relatively short. And we've got a lot of people who might want to say.
Could we also ask for people's names and where they live?
Absolutely. David, where do you live?
Clayton Smith. I live in Tam Valley. I've been around here since '69. I went to most of the housing element development meetings at City Hall. And what I saw there was a consultant firm that basically developed this idea that you just talked about, the filters and everything. And it seems to me that it wasn't until the very end of the process that this doubling of the number occurred. And my question is how do we make the consulting firm accountable for this process? And the second thing that I saw was a deafness. The Planning Commission and the City Council definitely know who you are and what you're thinking about, but they don't want to listen to you, even though you're speaking for the majority of the people who live in this community. And how can we support your effort to be heard? We need to know how to do that, because otherwise I'm afraid the game is up.
Well, thank you for saying that. You know, just give early and give often, I think is the answer. We're a nonprofit. I don't get paid for any of this. My book is for sale, $10 a piece. It's on special today, 2 for $20, only tonight. We're just doing what we can. A lot of people are volunteering, working for lower rates. We're working with community groups all over the county. I think that it's a two-pronged approach. I think that, community activism, it has a couple aspects. It's pitchforks and torches on one side, and it's well-written, well-reasoned arguments to the point of legal arguments on the other side. We filed an action against the Board of Supervisors recently because they continually violate the Brown Act. And in particular, did it in our case, and we just won a ruling toward that with the judge on points of law ruled in our favor. And in fact, the judge admonished the attorney at the hearing for the county by saying, he said, well, what do we do now? And the judge said, well, perhaps you should create some guidelines for your supervisors. So there's two ways to do this, and everybody brings a piece and a special knowledge. And I'm a great believer in, local control and local voices. So from everybody from the people in Nevada to Sausalito and everybody in between and Marin City. And so we do need help. I mean, we need financial help, and we need offers of pro bono assistance if someone has a particular skill, because all these things are very similar. And I think eventually the cities will listen when they are convinced that it can, that it makes sense. Now, our housing element is very much based on how we did it the last time. The only thing was, our REMA the last time was more than twice what it is now. It was over, I think it was 280 or 260 units. So, I don't know, I'm just a simple guy. If they cut it more than half down, and I know people at HCD and ABAG, and they've told me, executives of ABAG, they fully expect everyone to kind of cut it down. And the last thing I'll say is we had this argument at the county where they did the same thing. They based it on the last time. They had 284 units to build, and they had a buffer up to 750 units. And we brought an argument, and the community brought an argument, and we brought our legal argument, and they, at the final hearing, the supervisors cut 300 units out of that. They just started cutting sites out because they could see the community for the values the community cares about, which I'm sorry, that's a metric. Just because a consultant who's an expert. And I'll tell you one more thing is that in my book, I actually write about this because I went to Mike Morgan, he was first hired, and I actually proposed this idea. I said, why don't we do the whole city and filter it? And that's what I talk about in my book. And we just, like I say, we didn't go far enough. We need more filters. And we have the leeway to do it, so let's do it right.
So let's take a survey question here for the whole group, and knowing that we have the request, state mandated 129 units, city 364. With a show of hands, how many of you would be very happy if the RENA numbers that get submitted, or the unit numbers in our general plan, in the housing element, are 129? A show of hands if it less than 129. Okay, so how many of you, really like the 364? Let's go to that extreme. So we've got one. Okay, two, a few. Okay, two. So, okay.
Susan, can I briefly address that
Yes.
question? In regard to consultants, as Bob mentioned, one of my previous roles, I was a deputy county counsel in Santa Barbara County. I was tasked as the lead attorney on housing element issues. And Santa Barbara County had some pretty capable people, and we fought constantly with the state of California, who's trying to impose its will on Santa Barbara County. The agency, as Bob mentioned, is the Housing Community Development Department. And we fought back on behalf of the citizens of Santa Barbara, saying, we don't really like what you're telling us to do. Small cities have understandably a tougher time with that. They don't have the staff, they don't have the skill level to be able to fight some of the bureaucrats in Sacramento. So they hire consultants. And But the consultant's report to the planning director reports to the city manager. It's the city manager who has that responsibility to take him to task. But even above him is what? The city council. It is their responsibility. And I know it's hard, what you're talking about. They're volunteers, or essentially, they probably get a stipend or something, right? But, and you know, they like the perks. They like, you know, well, I'm a councilman. But they're still volunteers, and several of them probably have other jobs. But take them to task. You, 5 people, are responsible for this housing element, not the consultant. You, 5 people. Take a look and see what their oath is when they swear in.
And just to add, one of the immediate things of that is come to the meeting Monday night so that you're a part of the group that's there. Okay, I'm going to move along further. You had a question?
Yes, I'm Robert Brash, and I'm new to this, and I'm asking, before I make a comment, I'd like to get some clarification. During the discussion so far, I've heard mentioned several times of we and they, and I'm not sure how the sides are drawn up here. I assume that this is a meeting of the Friends of Mill Valley, which is not the Planning Commission. Rather, it's a loosely affiliated group of citizens who are concerned about Mill Valley, and presumably, and I'm asking, not telling, we're here to make recommendations or to have a group opinion be forwarded to the city and to the Planning Commission. Is that correct? Is that the way things are drawn up here?
Okay, so thank you for correcting me or pointing that out. When I say we, I mean Community Venture Partners, which is the organization I founded, and our IRS exempt purpose is to bring community voices to the planning and government process locally. So that's what we do. And so when I say we, I'm talking for myself personally, but also Community Venture Partners, which is a nonprofit organization. Friends of Mill Valley, we have to agree on all these issues, and I was part of that. When I say they, it means, depending on the context in the sentence, it either means the HCD in Sacramento or the kind of political forces at Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is another very major piece of this in Marin in general, or it is our staff, because our staff, the way, I think it's an unfortunate part of our government setup in most towns in Mill Valley, is that the staff, everything falls on them. And it's not a good idea, in my opinion, personally, to have unelected hired staff making policy decisions. I believe that public policy decisions should only be made by elected officials. But that's not our system, because our elected officials don't have the time, money, support. If they had staff, secretaries, and they could actually say, okay, find out everything about this and I want to report, that'd be one thing. But in our city, it doesn't work that way. So our public policy is where there's a vacuum. And when I say they, whether just saying it factually or antagonistically, I mean the staff report comes out and they wrote it. Our elected officials didn't write it. We as people theoretically had input, and you're going to hear the city say to you, come to the meetings, write letters, make your voice heard. I have been to all these meetings for 20 years. I have written things like this for 20 years. I will tell you categorically that without the pitchforks and the torches, all of it has been ignored. All of it. My personal experience.
Next question.
Hello, Doug Nelson, Sycamore Park, and my office is on the list. It's a building that my firm built 40 years ago. We've been there ever since. However, we don't own the property anymore. And I'm just kind of curious, and this, I don't know, I hope this is not really a rhetorical question, but what message are we to take from this action? And I have to say that when you read the housing plan, it doesn't sound very threatening, but somehow I feel like there is a message between the lines that we are not being told. And just also want to ask, so if the number is 364, I guess then it's a crapshoot. If the number is 129 and we're still on the list, is that guaranteed? And what does that mean then? What message should we be taking from it?
It's not a guarantee. I mean, the slippery part here is that it's incremental loss of local control. In other words, the HCD has made no secret about seeing, and HUD has made no secret about saying that if they can use something as a backdoor into local planning, they will do it. And so, because the housing element is the only piece that ends up going to Sacramento for certification, it's a backdoor into our housing plan. And there are many instances where HCD is telling cities what they have to do, exact parcels where they have to zone them, and this has been going on in cities all around Marin. So I think the danger is that every little piece starts to add up. And so I'll give you an example of that. Our zoning code we are rewriting. One of the things that's proposed for the new zoning code is that certain kinds of small units, micro units, so-called, which I used to call studio apartments, can have 0.5 parking spaces. Now, I don't know where you get 0.5 cars, but maybe smart cars have 0.5 cars. My point is that it sounds like there's no relationship between that and housing element, but as a former developer, you look for pieces that are incremental. If someone tells me I can do 0.5 parking spaces, that's money to my bottom line. It just is. You just gave me a gift. What was a parking space is now, half of it is now building, if I can do it within FAR and within lot coverage and all this. And you can't really say it's this absolute thing, and being on the list doesn't absolutely mean it's going to be developed because it's private development. But why, if we have to, I believe we have to do 129 units plus a buffer. I understand the need for a buffer because you don't know that all of them are going to work out. So maybe you say, traditionally, and I've done some surveying in the Bay Area, buffers are about 20%, 25%. That means that you're talking about another 30 units or so on top of that. Well, I understand that. I even understand 50 units on top of that because a lot of them are single-family properties. I don't understand hundreds of units on top of that, and there is no good answer for that at all. It just makes it easy, and it's the way we did it last time and all that. So the messaging, I'm going to say that Susan has created something, and do you want to talk about it for a minute?
Sure, just to say, we understand just how busy so many people are and that ultimately much of this gets boiled down to be really simple. So when you came in, there's a flyer over on the corner of the table, and I see there's still some there, which identifies 3 talking points that are a part of a lot of conversation boiled down to just these 3 talking points, which would be either what you write in your email that you send to the city council for the meeting, or that you make as a comment when you come to the meeting Monday night. So the 3 points are, 1, reduce the housing element site list to align with the state mandate of 129 units. The second thing, well, we've not even talked about this at all, but in addition to the capacity analysis that lists, of the 364 units, there is also a supplemental housing site list that lists even more, that happen beyond this process of the capacity list. So the second recommendation is to remove the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee's supplemental housing site list. And the third thing, that the housing element recommends that there be a housing advisory committee, and the recommendation is to reject that proposal to create a housing advisory committee. We already have a planning commission, we have a planning staff, we have a planning commission, and we have a city council. We've got governmental mechanisms whereby decisions around housing can and should be made in the current structures. To introduce another advisory committee that meets at times that you can hardly find out when they meet or what the agenda is, we know it's hard enough to get some of the information that we really want to see on the city's website. just, I don't know, I've gone to the website many times and have read about the extravaganza that was happening around Easter and around beautification events and about street closures, but nothing that was highlighting the importance of an 8-year housing element in a housing plan, that it just gets buried, or you have to really dig to find where it is on our own city's homepage. So these talking points are over there, as well as some what we're going to do kinds of things. Okay, I've got this question here, and then you'll be next, and then Jen. Name and city.
Trevor Hughes, Sycamore Park. Are we assuming in this discussion the corollary of this, what is going to happen if they go ahead with these 364 units? I'm thinking specifically of the problem of traffic we have at the moment, and not only the problem of traffic, but also the problem of safety. If and when, and it will go sometime, we have at the head of this valley an Oakland fire. I've been to the training sessions, and sparks are going to be flying high into the air. How is the equipment going to get there? And how are the people going to escape? Are the people who are aware of giving us these numbers aware of the fact that we are in a valley with only 2 roads which will not allow access of firefighting equipment? This is so stupid. It's building a fire trap for us. Now this should be the first thing that we consider.
Here, here.
Secondly, the quality of our lives depends on traffic. And we know that if we keep lots of rats in a box, they eventually go crazy. And if you have people crowded together waiting for an hour to get onto the freeway, they eventually will go crazy. We have paid a lot of time and sweat and work earning money to earn where we live. And it seems to me that this, we bear a certain consideration for that investment in time and space. And finally, I got that piece of the round robin of the notice from the council, and I was disturbed because it was written in such a way that it was like taking a sedative. We're going to do this, but don't bother about it, we've got it under control. There was no even any idea of what we're doing. I believe that this, if we go through with this, we're letting the cat out of the bag forever. And we are, in 8 years' time, there'll be another. And does this problem at the moment include making mega mansions out of small homes? Is that part of the deal?
I have to agree with you, the traffic is an issue that we have to really consider, and you kind of touched on some things. Everybody's been saying, why is traffic getting so bad? And, if you were here during Christmas week and Christmas Eve before, we went to try to go to the movies in the afternoon, and I live right here at this intersection, Camino Alto and Sycamore, and we left 45 minutes to get to Corte Madera. 40 minutes later, we hadn't even gotten to 101. And this is not a catastrophe. This wasn't an emergency. It's Christmas shopping.
Oh, it is a catastrophe.
And maybe that's a catastrophe. But the point is, it isn't the fire, which is inevitable, or the earthquake, which is more inevitable. And so it really is kind of nuts to say, well, it's a natural thing, it'll find its way out. I don't even go anywhere between certain hours anymore because I have to go past the middle school. So I just say I can't make that meeting. So between this hour and that hour, I won't, because I won't have a half an hour to get to the freeway or 20 minutes and then I got to drive. And you're right about something, but the question is, why is there traffic? Well, I think there are a number of issues that are really important. One is the houses. On my block in the last 20 years, every house that was owned by an elderly person has been bought by a young family. Okay, so families with kids drive more. The second thing is there's an echo boom. Everybody knows somebody on their block whose kid is now driving. They're between 16 and 24, 25. This is a lot of drivers. and that's called the echo boom. The other thing is that the middle class life has changed. Everybody is 2 income earners, 2 workers, and they use a lot more services. You know, when I grew up, we didn't have anybody do anything. I mean, we did everything. Now, it's not rich people. Everybody has gardeners. Everybody has somebody delivering their cleaning. Everybody has, you know, UPS showing up every other day for what they bought on Amazon. It's a different world. And the last thing that the capacity analysis in terms of traffic impact didn't even consider is that when I look at Mill Valley, there are about 1,000 lots in Mill Valley that are what I would call underdeveloped in our new paradigm, meaning you tear the house down, build it twice the size, and you can do it under our existing zoning, no changes, or you substantially rehabilitate it and make it twice the size, whatever. That is, properties go from being a 1-car, 2-car property to being a 3-car property or a 4-car property. And the biggest nonsense I've heard propagated is that, you know, multifamily reduces cars and reduces traffic. Now, every study that's actually come out with that answer was done, guess where? In a dense urban environment. In San Francisco, in New York City, in Chicago, those are the studies. There's no suburban study that supports that whatsoever. And think about it this way. I live on a 50 by 125 lot. If we said, well, we want to increase density with infill building, I can easily, as an architect, see how to build a duplex on my property. By code, I now have to provide for 2 cars because I'm a single family. On the same lot, if I make a duplex, I have to provide for 4 cars. And if it's a little bit bigger, I can build a triplex and have to provide for 6 cars. And believe me, some of those are going to sell for $850,000, those condos, if even that cheap. And they're going to have cars. And low-income people have cars. And if you want proof and you don't believe me, go to the Canal District in Santa Fe. There are more vehicles on the street, on every lawn, on every curb, in every driveway, in every spot possible there than there are in Mill Valley. And this is one of the lowest income places in Marin. So you just have to kind of have some common sense.
We're not low income.
I'm just saying that there's an argument that we should, that low income will reduce traffic and reduce cars. I think we should build low income, but don't tell me we're going to reduce traffic that way. So I agree with you, traffic is we're at a tipping point where it's actually dangerous. What about emergency vehicles? What about ambulances? What about these things? I mean, you have to plan. This is what I mean about the difference between planning and just filling out what you can do or are supposed to do. So, enough said.
I feel a little awkward because there's only been men speaking, and I'd be happy to pass it to the women. Nature often doesn't have a voice in this process either, and I'm sure there's something in the general plan that I haven't read, so I don't know. But at what point do we, as not just a community called Mill Valley, but the human species in our county, let's say, in this suburban, semi-rural county, at what point do we say, no more building, because we've reached the limits of what the nature here we can provide and tolerate in terms of our activities, around water and other things. So I hope nature has a voice in the planning process, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Second, when I look around at the situation, I see gentrification, making things less affordable, not more affordable. And I think we need to address that with not just local control, but rent control for businesses and for residents renting. And it's not a scary thing at all, actually. Think about it, we all want an affordable community. And we're becoming less affordable every week, every month, as houses are rebuilt and made less affordable. So Yeah, if you could comment on that as a strategy, a real strategy, and we can agree to it as a community. It's not communism, but, you know, maybe that's another answer.
My comment to that is I'm personally not in favor of rent control, only because it's failed so badly in places like where I grew up in New York. That said, I completely agree with you on the environmental issues, and I want to put this idea out there. I think we're at a very unique inflection point in history, and I think that's part of what we have to step back and understand to solve the problem. And what I mean by that is we're right at the cusp of understanding the kinds of technologies and how we have to build in order to make building a zero carbon event. But we haven't figured out how our system is completely rigged the wrong way to make it happen. And that's a problem, and it may mean, in my mind, that we slow down a little bit until we do it right. And then we can do it. And, you know, if George Lucas is going to build these units up there, I hope he builds a zero carbon footprint, uses all the water, completely solar, wind. I hope he does a demonstration project that's the best that's ever been done in California. So, you know, on that issue, the second thing is we're at an inflection point in terms of finance. Because the truth is that the federal government has been deconstructing the affordable housing finance situation in this country for more than 30 years. They've been taking it apart. They created a low-income housing tax credit incentive in the late 1980s, 1986, and they haven't substantially increased the nominal number since then. It was $6 billion in 1986. It's about $7.5 billion now. And everybody knows the price of houses have gone, you know, up 10 times. So we don't have really the kind of financial institutions and financial structures in place. And I'm sure there's anyone who hears developer could probably tell you that they wouldn't mind building lower income stuff at all if they could figure out how to do it without losing money. There was a lot more around. When I was doing this in the 80s and early 90s, there were a lot more financing instruments out there to do that. It was easier to get to. More people were benefiting, more builders, but now it's very difficult. And so, again, maybe it's time to look at how we do things politically in that area. And that's not something we can solve in Mill Valley, to be honest, at all. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. But I think it's a problem. It's another inflection point where it's enough already. Markets are not going to solve everything. I mean, they're just not. They solve a lot of things, and I'm a pro-market guy, but it's not going to solve these kinds of problems. So, anyway.
All right, our next question is back here, and then I'm going to be looking for women who have their hands up and have questions. So,
I'm not a woman, but I have a twin sister. She's not here tonight. I'm Bill Clements. I actually live in Tiburon now. I have owned 3 different homes in Mill Valley, and I raised my children here. The last home that I sold actually had a very large redwood in the back that had been burned seriously in a big fire. Reminded of, as people talk about emergency services, if that fire, which happened in the early 1900s, I believe, happened to anything like that today, it would be very hard to get out of this town. And by the way, as somebody who no longer lives here, but according to Google Maps is only 10 minutes away, I rarely come back because it's really 40 minutes. Because you're literally packed in here with cars on Blythedale. It's an impossible situation. That's not my point. My point is this. In the just very recent experience here in the county, Corte Madera got overrun by some developers when the citizens were not aware of what was happening, and we ended up with a wind cut. That sparked a lot of awareness, a lot of people woke up. That's when I met CVP, and joined with a lot of other people who, thanks to Bob and Ed's efforts, did an incredible job on a shoestring budget to stop the Larkspur Station area plan, which I'm sure very many people are aware of, but literally building thousands of homes within a mile of the Larkspur Ferry and no plan for any transportation. And by the way, nobody's moved into Wincott yet. a development that is literally twice the size of what the citizens were told was going to happen. And one of the things that happens in these processes is that once this gets past the public comment place, all kinds of damage can be done and it never comes back to the public. If you were at the original Larkspur Station area plan and you saw what the developer said Windcup was going to be, you go, well, that's not so bad. That's not anything what Windcup looks like. So there is a moment where the citizens can make a difference. Here's the moment in Mill Valley. For literally pennies on the dollar of what it would cost to normally run a really strong, intellectual, legally sound argument, these gentlemen have done miracles. I encourage you to tell your friends, to go on Nextdoor, to send all of this material to everybody you know in town. If there's 150 people that saw this tonight, make it 1,000, make it 3,000, and whatever you thought you might give, make that 5 times that. It's the best money you'll spend in Mill Valley. Thanks.
Just to say, this is the basket that we have for supporting CBP. If we picture this filled before people go home tonight. I've got a big basket.
Bill, you're hired.
Big. Okay, let's see. I want to get some women.
I just want to say one thing. This stuff is, the problem with this is very complex stuff. And unfortunately, on all sides, it can get reduced to sound bites and this and that, and that's unfortunate because it's complicated stuff, and I understand how does somebody who's never been involved in it even start to grok what the pieces are and whatever. And there are public processes. You can go to the planning commission hearings, and you can voice, and you do have a chance to say things, but unless you really can understand what the issues are, and also you can stay there till 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night, when you have to get up. It's just, it's hard, and I think Gavin Newsom said something that's also part of the problem here. He wrote a book called Citizenville, and he said, the world has transitioned into a 24/7 choice-driven, internet-enabled experience. So, it's 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, and you decide you want to buy something, and you just go buy it. And you compare it, and you look at it. And he said, but the government is state-of-the-art 1975. And that's a profound statement. In other words, the way government is structured, the way it runs, the way it thinks, the way it processes, it's just not keeping up. And even though I think Mill Valley as a city, among cities, has made a heroic effort to try to do Nextdoor and emails and all this kind of stuff, it's not the way people use the internet. And it's just a very difficult thing. So I don't want to place blame, but I want to say this is a shared problem. Anybody has an idea about that? Bring it forward, because we'd love to hear it on all sides.
Hi, I'm Joyce Britt. I live in Cascade Canyon here in Mill Valley. I want to congratulate you on a very clear and substantive letter that you wrote regarding the housing element. And I'm sure you've also looked at the city's response. Briefly stated, there are 2 items on that are probably of interest to most of us. One is the very long planning process that went into the general plan and the housing element. And the second contention that they make is that in no way is local control effective. So if you could just briefly comment on those 2 items, because as I said, the letter that you wrote was quite clear, but they answered with what is in essence, no, that's not right.
Thank you, Joyce. I think I'm going to ask Ed to talk about the local control and that kind of thing. And my position personally is the general plan has it right, the housing element has it wrong. In other words, the rest of the general plan kind of makes sense in itself. But the housing element sticks out like a sore thumb and violates all kinds of things that are seen in there. But Ed was instrumental in helping me understand, really teach me these legal arguments which are, again, subtle arguments, but they're very real about what it means to have something on a list and the kind of laws that prevail in local control. And I want to ask him to address that whether he wants. But as I say in this executive summary that's in the back, and I said in my second letter on April 11th, which there are copies of, the staff report makes an incredible effort to say that the arena numbers are meaningless, toothless, don't matter, never get built, all this stuff. So then why is it, if we ask for one site to be removed, they say, oh no, we can't do that because HCP wouldn't like it. I mean, you just can't argue both sides, you know. That doesn't sound like absolute local control to me. So I'll turn this over to Ed and see if we can.
I'm going to use the whiteboard here.
As Ed's moving to the whiteboard, just to acknowledge Terry Staker, who's taking some notes for us and doing some scribe work for us, so thank you, Terry.
So this is the city planners argument. Bob and I met with the city manager and his planning director on this very point. Where did you last question? Sure. Okay, you're hitting me there. Where are you? Yes. So your question. To answer their question is, we don't give up any local control. So their argument is essentially this. 0, which is right now, how many units are going to be, or planning to be rezoned? Their argument is that equals that. I'm not a mathematician, but I got some problems with that. And the problem is these are going to be rezoned. That's the plan. And they're going to be rezoned to more density. That's what the housing element does. Why does it do that? Well, I'm a former land use professor also, and I'll try to speak briefly about this, but when you go to planning school or you take these land use classes, you get introduced to some of the the social problems in America on housing, and some wealthy communities have been keeping out poor people. And it's true, across the country, in certain places, there's no doubt about it. It's like, we don't want them here. Or they just want it to stay the same. And so many state governments have said, you're going to have to. So this California state government says to everybody, you've got to do this minimum thing. Because some of you are bad actors. Okay? So Mill Valley is 129. Here's your minimum. We're not saying you're a bad actor, and Mill Valley probably isn't. I don't know anything about whether it should push off on housing, but I have never heard anything about it. I haven't heard anything about anybody in Marin doing it. It's pretty unusual these days to set up all these roadblocks to low-income housing. So there's this minimum number that is at 129. That's going to be rezoned. That's a change in your zoning ordinance. And the housing element will reflect that. And that means there's more density of 129 units. The city of Mill Valley is saying that's what we're supposed to do, and we're going to put that up to 364. So 364 units will now be rezoned. Once the city adopts its housing element and the state of California certifies it, once that happens, the city can't back off that number. And if they adopt 364 or 129, they can't back off that number. If they try and do it, there's what are called builder's remedies under the government code. It enables a developer, enables anybody, actually, any nonprofit, and maybe it's a housing nonprofit or something, could sue the city and say, you need to rezone, you have to rezone. So what the city planners and the city managers said is that we're not amending anything else in the zoning ordinance. There's still all the same requirements. But they don't finish the sentence, except that you're rezoning 364 units, which means those multifamily homes will have different zoning requirements than single-family homes. And typically, it's less. The other part of that is, and Bob actually knows maybe more how to calculate this than I do, is once you designate 364 as opposed to 0, you get to add on, the developer gets to add on to that a density bonus of up to 35%. Depending if it's senior or very low income, but let's just call it 25%. Because it grades up as you get more low income. So every one of these numbers, whether it's 129 or 364, a developer gets to say, I want 25% more. So 25% of 0 is 0. You add in 364, you get 25% of 364, which is 80, 90. So the real number is 455 or something. And you can't stop the 25%. Once you rezone it, the city has to abide by the zoning ordinance in regard to multifamily housing. You can't say, we don't like this particular unit, this development in this place. Bob's letter explains this really well, his last letter. You don't get, the city doesn't get to say, okay, yeah, we agree with you, community. We're not going to put that line of Pigman's lumber. The developers say, too bad. We get to put it there because it's been rezoned.
Okay, good. We've got a bunch of other questions.
Can I just add something? In fairness to the city of Mill Valley, the good news, bad news is that most of the sites on the housing on the list do not require rezoning. They're actually already zoned for it. And so, and the density bonus goes as high as 35%, but it would only apply to larger. I mean, if you have one property and you're going to add another unit, even if it's very low income, you get a 0.35 unit. You can't build that. So it really, the density bonus is only a consideration on sites that are potentially large, like Goodman's Lumber or Slopes Nursery, where someone could say, I really think I need to build 45 units there to make this make sense. And the city has argued that what's the difference? Because we have a planned development process now, and under what's called planned development process, anybody at any time can come to the city and propose to build anything anywhere. I mean, that's just the way it works. You can show up and say, I know this is a store now or a gas station, but I want to turn it into a hotel, and that's a planned development process is all bets off process. Your zoning code is potentially wiped away, your height, setback, FAR, lot coverage, parking, it can all be granted if the city wants the proposal. So when we approved 505 Miller, we gave them a 20 parking space exemption. We said you don't have to provide 20 parking spaces for your residents because they have a couple sort of low-income units in there. So the process, it is true, but why put an extra, I'm just saying, why put an extra sign up saying, come to Goodman's and build housing? I mean, I want a sign up that says, we love Goodman's, we want it to stay a local serving business and support them because they're under tremendous pressure from Home Depot and online sales to even exist. And so they do need our help, and that's a community value, that's all I'm saying. Community values to me are more important than all the technical arguments or formulas or anything else. So I just want to point that out.
Okay, next question's back here.
James, it would seem that it would seem to be a good idea for maybe the Mill Valley City Council and the Planning Commission was invited to come to a Friends of Mill Valley meeting so that the questions can be asked in an open forum and answers given. There was a retreat recently, February 23rd, at the Apple Hotel, where there's no public, and there were changes made to the core values, which was passed on the consent calendar the very next week. So I think that would be a good thing if the City Council and the Planning Commission came here. Second point is that in fact, yes, the City Council and the Planning Commissioners are responsible for what is done. And we have a mini Wind Cup in Mill Valley, in the form of Throckmorton Village, where there were 11 units of very low-income housing that was done away with the guidance and approval of the City Council and the Planning Commission, has been replaced by $9 million condos, plus 2 moderate condos, which then gave the city an ability to increase the bulk, the footprint, and reduce the parking. So yes, I do think the City Council and the Planning Commissioners need to come to answer questions. And the third thing is, at what point is it recognised that Mill Valley is already completely built out, overbuilt, and there's no more room for building at all, especially with the infrastructure in the condition it is. The roads are a complete disaster, and Mill Valley is physically not getting any bigger. So how can you keep on getting into it?
Okay, that's a good response to that.
I mean, I think, this is part of this tough problem, Michael, because we live, our system says you own property, you have property rights, and the person obviously could achieve higher value by tearing down the low-income units, and this is a problem everywhere. We're losing low-income housing faster than we're replacing it across the country. It's not unique to Mill Valley, and it's just because, what do you do? I mean, how do you tell somebody if the zoning exists and they own the property, there's limits to that. I think the City Council can't be here because then it's a meeting and they have to agendize it and all that, but some members have shown up, and that's a good thing. I want to say one thing about cities. If you look at the history of the cities, they go through, peaks and valleys. They go from being the greatest place to live to being nobody wants to live there anymore, let's leave, to being I grew up in New York City. It went through enormous changes. It was the greatest place in the world in the 50s and 60s. By the 70s, it was basically a war zone. And, and then by the 90s, it was suddenly, the Big Apple again. And a lot of this has to do with what I'm saying, is that we're at these kind of inflection points where there are so many problems we're not solving that it's causing so many kinds of other problems that my suggestion is we slow down and we don't, if we absolutely don't have to, we don't agree to visions of the future for the next 8 years, no matter how toothless someone wants to argue, because the next council or next situation will suddenly decide it does have teeth, and they'll argue that it should have. And so I think we should, that's why I'm saying common sense dictates that we just slow down and we don't agree to these things to any extent more than is reasonable. And then, in the meantime, we keep working on how do we get affordable housing? How do we do it? How do we build it? CVP has a project we're proposing in Larkspur, which is a combination of aquaculture, which is organic, growing vegetables and fish at the same time, and affordable housing in one project. And we believe we have ways to finance that with government grants and seed it in a way that can make it more viable. We need new ways to live and new ways to build, and not just, here's the plans I built in Fresno, and I've been building it forever. What's the problem? I changed it to shingle. You should be happy. That's not the future. So I'm just asking for more intelligent decision-making, more comprehensive thinking.
Okay, I'm going to look over here just because I've not taken any questions from this section and favoring, are you from Mill Valley? Yes. Okay.
What made you think of us?
Because I see a couple of other names of people who aren't from Mill Valley. Just to say, I'm going to first go to Mill Valley residents for questions.
I'm Randy Smith. I live in Scott Island, and I just want to say I appreciate everything you're talking about. And several months ago, I sent letters to the mayor and city council members about the traffic issue. This really wasn't on my radar when that happened. Because I guess I'm ignorant, but this was not an issue. Now suddenly it gets mixed into the whole picture, and it seems like this entire set of problems are all disconnected one from the other. There's no conceptualization of what bearing is that going to have on what is already a seemingly impenetrable problem. I have to say, in keeping with what you're saying, when I went to the city, first of all, I got next to no response from the mayor or the city council. And when I went there and presented a set of hypothetical solutions to the traffic problem, a multi-factorial set of solutions, they blew it off. The mayor shut me up, and I was very polite, didn't want to listen. The Caltrans people were there with the plan for the metered lanes going on the freeway. And their solution and the way they talked about it was nuts. You know, and they cited the use of traffic engineering information, and that's what they used over there in Tam Valley, which made it fantastic. I said, these guys don't know what they're talking about. So I'm just really concerned. There is no conceptualization of how to deal with the existing volume of traffic in relationship to this kind of issue. The safety issue of fires is a whole separate issue. When I sit there for an hour, there are thousands of people. That's thousands of hours of people sitting, Mill Valley residents, sitting in their cars and burning gas. It's lunacy. And the sad thing was I got no response of any. They didn't like anything I had to say, and they had no ideas. They really seemed to have no ideas. So I don't know what we can do as a community about it. I don't know whether these are elected officials that we can get rid of and find people who will staunchly advocate for an integrated plan. They can have this issue, front of issues so that this becomes a livable community.
So I just want to say about it, and thank you for what you said. I have this way of looking at this, which I'll just share with you, which is we have to do it ourselves. I mean, I know it's unfair that we pay all our taxes and we pay for the city staff and they have nice pensions and they have nice everything and they're not doing what we might want to see happen. Unfortunately, on top of that, we still have to do it ourselves, give it to them for free and make believe they did it. And I'll give you an example of that. They hired a consultant to handle this to do a bathroom at the depot. And they had all these hearings, and they had all these plans. And I looked at the plans, and I went, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And so I went home, and I designed a different plan. I did renderings. I did the whole thing for free. I just gave it to them, to the plan. I threw it over the transit, didn't even go to the hearings, and said, this is a better idea. And here it is for free. And you know what? The Parks and Rec said, yeah, we like that idea best. And the architect was really pissed off. And then they went to the city council and they said, yeah, we like that idea best. And you're like, and do you think I got a thank you? Did anyone say anything? So this is the real world. In the real world, we have to do it. We have to demonstrate the right thing. If you want legislation, we have to write the legislation. We have to propose the legislation. You know, it's majority rules. And if I'm wrong and the majority disagrees with my ideas, I'm totally happy. I just want everybody involved in the process, that's all.
Okay, so I know we want to wrap up about 9 o'clock and move into questions and comments. So I'm just going to ask that we see if everyone can do this kind of like popcorn and maybe quicker in terms of your questions and quicker in terms of your responses so we can keep getting some more.
Comments, I don't need to respond to everything. So if people just want to talk to each other and make a comment to the group, please do it.
Hi Bob. Hi everybody, I'm Stephanie Witt and I've been around a little while. I think it's way over 65 years. So I feel kind of caught about between the traffic and the housing since I'm in real estate. My friend Jane is here with me and Peter. We see it every day, we hear it every day. Our clients are about ready to, pull their hair out when it comes to planning. I think there needs to be a blending, there needs to be a plan. I live on East Blythedale on top of it. So I'm stressed. I used to be able to come home at 5 o'clock whistle and there were no traffic and, nobody cared where I was, but now it's different. But we all know that. So one question I did have, Bob, is it says no on a housing advisory committee. What kind of committee did you think that, what does that mean?
Well, They are, well, that's a good question. What it means, that's what we've been asking, is that there is a proposal in the housing element to create an affordable housing committee. And so I've been asking, why? What is the need? What do they do? And one of the problems was that during this group that is called the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee, which our mayor, Ken Martell, is a member of and has never disclosed at a meeting. I'm sorry, he should have recused himself a number of times. But they created a supplemental list that they wanted included in the housing element. All of the sites on that list have previously been rejected by the approved process to have sites. And they even went to Sacramento and said, well, we're the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee, and got an audience there. And I pointed out to the city, I said, well, this is dangerous because these people are not elected. They're not even the planning commission, which under the law we create. And I think the planning commission is more than adequate to do things. And this whole thing came out of, to be honest with you, came out of conversations that Andy Berman and I and some others had years ago, where we said, why don't you have sidebars when you're on the planning commission? Why don't you bring in a bunch of developers or a bunch of, bring in some, bankers. If you've got a problem about something, ask people that do this for a living. Don't just leave the planning commission up there trying to figure it out, or even staff. It's not fair. So if you go ask developers what they think of what you're doing, why not ask them? And so this became a permanent committee idea, and I'm just saying, well, we don't need it as a permanent thing because they don't have a job. What are they supposed to do that we're not already doing? That's my only, why have another layer of government if you don't need another layer of government, is my question.
Well, my idea of the Housing Advisory Committee, which I propose to everybody on the city council, and a few people on the planning, is the real estate community, we're on the front line of housing every single day. And so I've said 101 times, why don't you get an advisory committee made up of real estate agents who actually work in the community with our clients every day on all aspects of housing, and we hear what they have to say, and we're a conduit, and we're 1,100 strong.
I totally agree with that. I just don't think it should be a permanent part of government.
No,
I think it should be 6 months.
It's an advisory thing.
Yes, but I mean, in other words, while you're doing it, say for 1 year, these people are going to advise. That's fine, but to make it a permanent part of government with no sunset provision and no delegation of what they're going to be responsible for, I don't see why we need that. So I think we agree with each other.
This is a response to a couple of the questions, because I keep hearing transportation issues, traffic circulation, safety. And so these issues are supposed to be looked at very early by the planners, by the consultants. Typically, it doesn't happen so much in almost any place in the world. I work actually in several countries as well. So what the governments have done is require that these environmental impact reports be prepared, because most planning entities don't do those global planning studies. They should do really early on. And then their capacity planning, things like what are the housing needs, and then what's the transportation. So CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is the vehicle, vessel in which cities are supposed to look at these issues. The problem is they put it at the end of the process. They figure out, we want 364, and then we'll study it. Well, why didn't you incorporate the environmental document earlier? Maybe get a spectrum of 129, 200, 364. So they do it after the fact. But in any case, that's the system. And if those issues are of interest to you, then try and be active in the CEQA process for the housing element. I don't know where they are right now. I don't know if they started or...
No, it's done.
What?
It's done.
They certified it or...
No, I mean, there's no CEQA process left in the housing. It's going for final adoption. It's done.
Okay, well, but they haven't certified the document. So The other part of it is, if you want to challenge a city's decision on housing element, the legal avenue is to challenge the CEQA document. So even at this point, you can still comment. Your transportation analysis is inadequate. Your safety analysis is inadequate. Impacts, socioeconomic impacts in the community, environmental impacts are inadequate. So just blast that out and hold your place. If you later need to challenge it, CEQA's the document.
Yeah, I'm Don Herzog, 15-year resident of Valley, live on Franco Slopes, Buckhorn Park. I'm a civil engineer. I've written letters to the mayor. I met the city manager yesterday about traffic. The general plan calls for a traffic delay at peak periods at East Blytheville and New Elko of less than a minute. I got there less than a minute, and the plan to be redone exceeds that. And so the general plan right now, it's a horizontal document, is not valid. Second, what is the legal right of the people to build? Like if I want to develop the Goodman site right now, does the city have to give me rights to do it, or permission to build a certain amount there, or the Richardson property, or any of these properties there? Do they have the rights now to build, or is there any way that we can buy those rights, or
No, I mean, there's no right. The housing authority doesn't confer any by right. The housing element doesn't
not the
confer.
element though, just today?
No, I mean, if whatever it's, like the Richardson property is asking for a rezoning. They want to go from they have a certain kind of commercial zoning, and they want it to be rezoned for housing. It's part of their proposal, so it's a plan development process where that's what they're asking for. The issue, the thing is, it's project by project. There's no blanket statement, so the community has suggested a lower capacity on that property than the city is suggesting. And the community's made very credible arguments as to why it's very hard to get in and out of that property. The proposal the developer put up there couldn't even be accessed by fire trucks. We don't have anything tall enough. We couldn't get into the streets. There's a question whether it's a subdivision, a public road, a private road. It was kind of a mess, and so, no, he doesn't have the right. It has to get approved. He has to make a submittal. But why make it more confusing for the developer, who then comes back, and I think rightfully so, in some cases that I've seen, and says, I've spent 6 years trying to get this approved. The Planning Commission's changed 12 times since then, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm not totally disagreeing with the developer's position. So there's going to come a point where it's worth enough money for a developer to say enough, and I'm going to fight this. And I'm worried about that, because the way prices are going, that's inevitable. So no, there's no right conferred by this. They're in our neighborhoods paying some absurd amount of money to buy a little lot with 10 square feet of grass, and a picket fence. And human nature has not changed at all. And people are using those studies to falsify facts. The fact is, we have an echo boom. The echo boom is not getting a good wage. They're not earning as much as we could have earned when I was younger. They have to live in more urban environments. And let's face it, when you're 25 years old, you want to be in New York City or San Francisco. You want the nightlife. You want the action. You don't care about a car. So it's just not true. Human nature has not changed. We're just in that point in the demographic in urban areas. But in Mill Valley, it's not the same. Mill Valley kids drive if they have access to a car.
At one of our meetings a couple of years ago, a young man stood up who was probably in his early 30s, looked like a fairly high earner, who pleaded for a place for people in his position to be able to live in Mill Valley as single people. That there were no places for single people. Also, my hairdresser can't live in Mill Valley, so she is part of the traffic going in and out. So it seems to me that we could, I'm hearing everybody wanting to keep our neighborhoods the way we found them and we live in them. But it's a not a very Christian community, when there's just a bunch of us old people living here, and we don't allow any new lifestyles in, any different ages who can afford, young couples who haven't had children yet, or they want a place to live while they have maybe only one. There is a transition area, age of life too, that would like to live here. Do we only want one type of person living in Mill Valley?
Carolyn, I don't think anybody's saying that in this room. I mean, nobody believes that. But what are you doing about it? Did you take your property and build low-income units on it? I mean, it's hard. You're identifying the problem we're all sitting here trying to solve. We're just not going to solve it by just doing academic exercises and using the wrong data and giving away just bowing to whatever a government process in Sacramento tells us to do. We're going to have to solve this. I mean, I think you're right that Mill Valley should try and figure out how to do demonstration projects that say, how in a rich suburb do you solve this problem? How do you do it? What are the needs? What are the financing? How does it work? How does it get built? How do you acquire land or do you lease land? We should dig into it because if we could solve the problem, it would be repeatable across the country. The problem you're describing is a problem of our time. It's not a problem of Mill Valley, it's a problem of our time. And you know that most people over 60 years old in Mill Valley are stuck in their property. They cannot sell because where are they going to go? Unless you want to leave Mill Valley, you can't. I can't afford the house I live in. I could not buy the house I live in. There's no way. So my choice is I sit in a 4-bedroom house or what? And so, that's why junior second units are being proposed, where I can divide off a room and a bathroom in my house without changing the footprint and turn it into an affordable unit. Because it's a way to back engineer an existing home into 2 homes and one's affordable. We're all trying to do this. No one that I know is saying what you are saying we're doing. Now, there are people that don't want anything to change, and there are people that think, the world is just what they want it to be. And to be honest, some of those people have just moved here and are building, mansions, and they don't want it to change, they want to have a mansion here. So, it's not really to blame. I think it's a sincere, intelligent, honest people are really concerned about this, and that's why we're having these annual meetings, so people can think about it and talk about it, because, like I said, if the city's not doing it, we have to do it. That's your microphone. That's your microphone. No, that's the feedback from yours, because that's your speaking. Anyway, so I agree. I think everybody here agrees.
Thank you. I'm Peter Richmond in Tim Park, for 37 years. Same address, not the same house, but the same address. And some of what we're arguing about and concerned about tonight, somebody named Peter Richmond suggested a solution to about 20 years ago at an election nobody cared. That was to reduce the traffic by trying to work out through, at that time, available federal and state funding, a system of shuttle buses, which takes cars off the road. If you don't understand the Boston accent, I'll be happy to give this a translation in a minute. Cars meaning automobiles. Nobody cared. Everybody went with the status quo that said, oh, we don't need this, how are we going to pay for it, et cetera, and you should know the whole thing. So here we are now, 20 years later. We have more cars on the road than the Hollywood freeway at rush hour. Caltrans doesn't give a damn by regulating their lights to sync with ours, so when one is green, the next one's red, you sit there frustrated, burning up fuel, polluting the atmosphere. The runoff from the stuff from your fumes into the atmosphere, when it rains, then hits the street, gets washed into the stream, so you're polluting the streams. And all we care about is what are we going to do about traffic. The other thing that's going on, everybody's complaining about people who just want to come here, as Bob correctly said, and build mansions. You already have the power of regulation. Participate in local government and get involved in trying to establish regulation as you see it. Become part of the system. Volunteer to work on some of the various boards, like the Planning Commission, et cetera, when something comes up. If you have some expertise, use it. Right now, all we're doing is years from now, those of us who still be alive then, I'll be in my 90s by then. We'll be sitting there saying, well, we get traffic, we can't do anything about it. What happened? Because nobody listens.
Quick comment on that. A lot of the planners in Marin have bought into very much into this smart growth concept. And it's hard to explain what that is. It's an academic concept. It's a developer's concept. And mainly it's trying to institute places like Arizona and Florida, big flat places with big highways. And in the Bay Area, it's kind of apt to do in some place like Fruitvale in Oakland, where there's BART stations, and there's highways, and there's transit centers. Marin is really not a good place for that because of the environmental constraints. That's what I was segueing off of. It's just the way it is. It's a very hilly place. We have a lot of creeks. We have wetlands. We're actually sitting on a wetland right now, aren't we? I'm assuming this is Bell, the San Francisco Bay, where we're sitting on. And so we've done a lot of damage to the bay, and a lot of people in Marin woke up 30, 40 years ago and said, enough. And so there's a lot of, we want to protect those creeks, we want to protect the biodiversity in the hills. And so it's really not an apt place for that because of environmental constraints and geographical constraints. And a lot of the planners are really focused on, well, I learned in school that we should have density and mixed use in these places, and sometimes it works. And what Bob, I think, was saying is there might be other ways to do that. You know, second units might be looked at a little bit more.
I just want to add to that, there's nothing stopping Mill Valley from being Manhattan. Nothing technologically stopping it. It's a decision. I mean, we could desal the ocean. We could, if we wanted to do it, we can do it. So it's all about decision and vision and all that. But I think that one of the things that's to address this thing about traffic is, one of the things we should absolutely be doing is creating more types of public transportation. Every single kind we can imagine. And we have to do that first. We have to solve our transportation problems, but like the Larkspur Landing Plan, everything's about building and capacity and more and mixed use or not mixed use. Nothing ever includes any transportation improvements. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be a combination of many, many things. Maybe we have to have cars that you can just borrow for an hour that are electric cars that, have our own version of that it just sits there. I don't know, but maybe we need an app to have computer-driven shuttles that can know where people are because they're saying on their smartphone where they are and deal with our canyons and all these and bring them to 101 and bring them to transportation corridors. There are endless ideas out there, and we're not spending any time and money on any of them. And MTC will spend $130 million they were going to spend through TAM to build a flyover to try and deal with the intersection of Sir Francis Drake and 101, and it didn't even work. And they finally had to give up on it. I mean, they have these mega projects, but what about, what could help regular people get around, reduce driving, whatever. One of the things I argue in my book is if you do the math, it's cheaper to give, if you say we should build 6 low-income units and do it in a place where these people won't have to drive as much, it's actually much cheaper, 10 cents on the dollar, to buy all those people a brand new Prius and give it to them than to do anything else. And you know what? You just solve the environmental impact overnight. You didn't build it, you didn't plan it, you just do it. So we're just not thinking, people say out of the box enough. We're not trying to solve. Transportation is a problem we have to solve and address. So, and then smart growth, we can figure that out later.
I got 2 quick questions for you. And I appreciate your solutions oriented, and it's not about fear mongering, and presumably we're both about diversity of housing. My first question, you mentioned the last housing element had 280 units identified.
The answer is, I don't think, Vince Smith could answer that better than us, but probably most of them were in the category of market rate. You know, I would say that if anything was built at all, I don't think that low income, we used the redwoods in the last one the same way we used it in this one, because it wasn't permitted yet, so we're allowed to bring it forward. So the very low income units, we haven't built, maybe any, I don't know, Vin might know better than I do, how many we built.
I mean, a big part of this is you're concerned about the 360 units that have been identified. It's the last 280 units. None of them were built.
Okay, I see your argument, but the question is, just because something didn't happen, doesn't mean it doesn't have the potential to happen. You know this. And so, yeah, we also went through a housing crash. We also went through 2008 and 2009 and 2010, and the big banks collapsed. It affected development.
It was a bubble before it was a crash.
No question, and maybe it's going to be a bubble again, I don't know. But the point is, you know, if you're saying that I shouldn't worry because it's 365, I don't think that's the argument. That's kind of like, you know, the argument is, well, why do it at all?
No, I'm just saying that we do have a housing diversity issue. I think everyone
Absolutely.
recognizes that.
Absolutely.
I don't know where you fit the right type of housing, but I think you have to take a broader approach. And so it just doesn't concern me that we've over-identified potential sites.
That's fine. You're entitled.
Yeah, quick question for Ed. You mentioned about density bonus, and you're concerned about density bonus. I'm curious which projects in Mill Valley were built with density bonus, or in Marin for that matter, and whether or not the process of density bonus is one that the city just has to lay down on, or if in fact those projects still have to go through public approval.
Well, can I just say, because he said he didn't hear the question, and I'll let him answer it also. The density bonus, state density bonus law overrides all local approval. You cannot deny a qualifying project a density bonus if it meets all the other conditions of the density bonus. And I can send you a legal analysis of that, Bruce, and you're welcome to argue it.
Are you saying those projects don't go through public approval processes and can't be?
No, they can obviously be disapproved for all the other reasons, but I'm saying that if they're a qualifying project, for instance, if they're a 100% senior project, you cannot deny the density bonus aspect of that project at all.
But you could deny the project.
Well, of course, you could say it's, you know, it's in a creek, I mean, no, and there's no question that density bonus, Leland Thomas argues this at the county level all the time, which is, you know, we haven't had that many projects with density bonus in the last 10 years. And my argument is, and I agree with you that in Mill Valley there are very few sites that would be impacted by the 35% density bonus. But that doesn't mean that if the market, I mean, I think the market's insane right now, but it could get insane. I mean, we all know it could get twice as expensive for some reason, and it may come a point that the density bonus is a bargaining chip that will be forced to do. I'm just saying, I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, can we consider the possibility, especially when it's on a site that like Goodman's, where I want to support that business to the extent we can. I'm not saying everywhere, but I'm saying there's certain sites that I think should have some be respected. So I think I've answered it.
Okay, so this microphone is not working, but I know we're losing lots of people, so I want to say a couple of things, and then I think it's fair to say Bob might be around to continue conversation for those of you who want to stay longer. Generally, just to say a big thank you for all of you who came out tonight and hoping that this was informative and inspiring. The second thing is to say the most important thing that you can do is to continue to think about this, read the materials, and show up Monday night with your opinion, however you have points of view about this topic, to show up Monday night and participate in letting your voice be heard about the housing element, which will be the topic of that. And if you go to the city's website, if you go to the CBP website, there's lots of places to learn more about it. I think there's also going to be an article coming out from Marin IJ that will also give you something Sunday or Monday to be able to hear about that. I guess the only other final thing is when you do finally end up leaving, I want Bob to have a couple of minutes to give your own wrap-up comments, or Ed, if you want to do anything you want to say. Okay, so then we're going to say thank you very much to Bob, to Ed, to everybody for coming.